Yo, what's up, guys? Interesting question here. Is the cake a lie? Oh, no, wait, different game. Is accuracy a lie? We do remember from back in the days where we could say at some point crit rate was a lie. What was happening? Well, crit rate was calculated twice on the first impact of crit. What does that mean? If you have about 80 crit rate, 80 crit rate times 2 is about like 98 crit rate. Therefore, a whole bunch of units you could run on like 75 to 85 crit rate, and it was pretty much the same thing as running it on like 99. What is the question at hand in this case? I do have my Oliver on a 70 accuracy, but 70 accuracy plus a 15 and 15 would make it that you actually get towards 85. 85 is the number that we would need to actually be able to land 15% of the time with the resistance that you normally have in the game. No matter what, there's always a 15% resistance, so therefore it would be 100 minus 15, 85 is the technical max. Does that also mean that a 70 plus a 15 over here is the technical max? Because something that some people did mention is like, okay, your Oliver is missing a lot. Could that maybe be a factor that is the issue and therefore it's not 85%? So one way to find that out is testing it. Please watch the whole video. At the end, I also mentioned during the results what is wrong with the RNG of Com2us, and also the reason why you do see some accounts have, for example, 5 LD5s in 10 scrolls, and other people go like 1,000 scrolls without any LD5s. Something like that is kind of shown in here as well. So for this test, I have a Nigong and I slapped whatever runes on it on 100 resistance. And I'm gonna let it auto against this Oliver with this. Plus, it doesn't have the skill 1. So we're also gonna calculate the skill 1 because the skill 1 should technically be a 30% resistance over there. So let's see if we can get those numbers. So we're gonna look at those numbers. So the assumption is hitting a 100 res unit with skill 3 would be a 70 plus 15 is 85. In other words, 15% res rate on the S2 and S3. It's actually S2 slash S2. Because I'm gonna do for both because both of them should be 85. Then we have another one. Skill 1 is a 70 plus 0, so therefore 70, so therefore should be a 30 res on this. Might be a little bit small to read, but then let me just zoom in a little bit. That kind of works. So now we have the S1 rate. I'm going to calculate them as a 2 for landing both, 0 for landing nothing, 1 for landing 1 out of 2 because it has the pushback and the reset. And then this one is just a pushback, and I'm not going to count it if there's no activation because the skill 1 doesn't have a full activation by itself, so therefore that one doesn't fully count. And then we're just going to let it run, and I'm going to do like a faster thing of just running a whole bunch of numbers, and every time that the unit dies, we're going to look at the numbers of the rates at that point, and we're just going to see how it is. And it's also not a problem if I put this one somewhat further down the bottom, because that's going to happen where I just go down and then just switch to the right side. So, time-lapse kind of thingy. Man, there's Oliver letting everything. This is not my RTA Oliver at all. So far we had a very high chance of landing. Let's actually put those numbers to a more readable size. So we had a 3% chance to miss over here and a 33 to miss over there. But let's get into a little bit more testing than just one rotation of these amount of numbers, because those are rookie numbers. We gotta up those numbers in this bracket. Okay, let's look at the numbers. We did see a few clusters here and there where we do have like a lot of 2s and then we got like a few 1s. I haven't seen a 0 yet though, which my Oliver today in RTA did do a lot of those. So if you can see here, we do get like a whole bunch of 2s in a row and then you get like a whole bunch of 1s. So for example, a match like this, you definitely are more bound to lose than a match like this. But let's look at the total numbers. So far, I'm actually on the 90 rate and this one is, interestingly enough, a 60 rate. Okay, definitely going to be getting up more numbers, but it's interesting to see that the assumption of 85 is now a 90, and the assumption of 70 is currently a 60. Let's up those numbers more. This was actually a very interesting set, so I definitely do want to zoom into this. If you can check like how bad the RNG was in here. So we did miss, we started off with the first 0 over here, then we had 1 land. I would have to recheck, maybe I missed a few numbers over here, but you can see that I was missing an insane amount over here. Oh wait, maybe I didn't do the proper recording. Nope, wait, I didn't do the recording of the game, so you just gotta believe me on this one, my bad. But this was a really horrible match. Wait, can you actually replay this? No, I don't think so. Why is this? Nope, I can't replay it. I didn't record it. Shit. But yeah, you gotta believe me on this one. This was a really bad match where we did get a bunch of 0s, actually pretty close to one another. Because we got a 0 over here and a 0 over here. But we got a whole bunch of misses over here. And that definitely does change the amount of outcome. Well, to 88, we already have a pretty high number. But yeah, that's definitely what you can see. Like if you get a whole bunch of these kind of games at first, and then suddenly you get a game that's looking like this, then yeah, you're definitely bound to lose a match like this. If your RNG starts here, and this is how much your Oliver lands, you're going to absolutely lose. And I think that's what the big issue is with Com2us War in general. They look at the big number. Let's say like if I do 1,000 tries, I'm pretty sure I will get to 85. Let's see how many tries I want to do. But if you have this small sample size, this is a match that like people would quit the game for, right? Okay, now making sure that I actually do get the replay in as well. And let's add some more numbers. That's 4 1s in a row, 5 1s in a row. Wow, that was a horrible streak over here as well. Like, if your match starts off like this, you're not happy. Okay, we ended with a 0 as well, so let's see what we have. Numbers, we actually got a 86, so probably it will level out to a 85 over a longer amount of time. I'm more surprised about this one, but I could say that this is kind of a low sample size rate, so this number definitely will go up a little bit more. So yes, the numbers are sound, the numbers, they are correct, but you can definitely see the clusters, because if we check a cluster like this, This is definitely an amount where you would win your matches. Like, you miss here and here, but that's totally not that bad of an issue, right? But there are a few clusters in there, and I think that's the main reason. Like this, for example. This is where you lose a match. That's why you tilt. And this, for example, checking out this cluster over here, this is where you miss half of your skills. Like, sure, in the end, it's 85, but this is where you tilt. And there was another one over here. Wait, there was at some point a bunch of zeros close to another. Wait, let's actually count how many times there were a 0. 4 times. 4 times 0 in a rate of, which is a rate of 0.013. And I think that could be correct. However, interesting thing is, I've seen this happen a few times today on my stream with me playing Oliver. So that's the thing. And I've also seen, like, if you have, for example, there were a few matches in here, or there were like a few clusters in here where you had like zeros pretty close to one another. Like, for example, if this is your match with your Oliver hitting 112, 111, 22, 12, it's like a Morse coding right now. But yeah, you really see that this is going to be a terrible match if you have this as a cluster. And I think that is the main issue for me, what's wrong with Summoners War. Like, oh, this is an even worse cluster. Wait, starting from this one. Let's see that this is your cluster of one match. You land less than half. And sure, in the end, it's going to be 85. But it's just the thing that I've mentioned to Com2us before. Like, people are saying, like, oh, remove violent and remove resistance and blah, blah. No, that's not the issue. The issue is making things more fair. Based on whatever RNG you had in the past, you should be rewarded or disrewarded in the future. Therefore, it should not be possible. Same as, like, violent. In the end, if you go Vio down on like 17, 12, it will be less chance for you to Vio. But there's just a lot more luck moments with resistance, revenges, despairs, blah, 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 yada, yada, all that stuff. And then even violence on 12. You should not be possible, like, still on violent of 12, you could technically violent 16 times in a row. That should not be possible. If you just violent, your chance to violent should be less on the next one. And it should not matter what the enemy does as violent, because that's the weird thing. Like, how Com2us works, or how Summoners works based off what Com2us idea was, if the enemy procs, your proc rate goes up. If they proc, their proc rate should go down, and it should stay down. And the moment that they didn't proc, it's not what I do. If I proc or not proc, that doesn't matter. If I play 4 Swift units, should not mean that you should be procking less or staying at 12 consistently and never taking a proc ever again. It should mean, like, okay, you didn't take an X amount of turns for procs, therefore you have a higher chance of procking. Rather than like these weird ass cluster things where you're just gonna you're bound to lose a match. Like, if you really bet on, like, hey, my Oliver needs to land at least, like, let's say 70% to win, there's a whole bunch of clusters in here which will definitely make you lose that match. Like, there's a few of those, like, boop, definitely like 50% of the hits in there. You're just done for. You're just absolutely done for. So that is my thing with Com2us. They always like to look at the big numbers. Like, if they do a sample size testing, probably some unit testing or whatever, they just give it a try on like 1,000 hits or 1,000,000 hits. The number is definitely going to be 85. I totally believe that. But if you make small clusters of 10 in 1,000,000 hits, there are going to be hits where you land less than 15% because it's statistically possible. And what I say to Com2us, that should not be statistically possible. So in the end, the assumption of hitting this with that is sound. It is true. Hitting this with that on the skill 1 is also true. Well, it's 63. It's like 0.7 off, or it's like 7% off. I do think that it will come down to 70 if I take a bigger sample size, because the sample size on this one is just not that big. Okay, this is a nice example over here. We have a record of 11, and Oliver missed about half of the skills he could do. If this is your cluster in your SWC match, you're out of SWC. You can go home. You practiced all year, you prepared all year, but you happen to get a cluster of something like this of RNG. So your units are literally landing half of their stuff in the big, or like in a smaller sample size, because that's what you have in a current match. You lose and you go home, and that's why people tend to call it not an esport. So once again, Com2us, this is really something I would like you to look into. I did mention this issue a bunch of times already, never really made a specific video on it and showed the math in this specifically, but here's that for you. Hope you do something with it. Also, guys, let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. Let's hope that they all make something for the better and less tilt, because in the end, we enjoyed this game. I'm not making this kind of video to say like, oh, let's all bitch on the game and stuff. No. I'm passionate about the game and I want to make it better. And I definitely do think that if things are less tilty, less people quit, more people enjoy the game, and less RNG and more fair RNG. Let's call that specifically more fair RNG, because you also have a bunch of clusters where you just land everything, which also doesn't make sense if you keep in mind that you should miss 15% of the time. So let's say that your enemy is in a cluster of this, yeah, they're gonna land everything. So more fair RNG, it's the only thing I'm asking for. And you do know those guys that get like 5 LD5s out of 10 scrolls and you pulled like 1,000 and you didn't get any? Same fucking issue. Okay, been doing this for a little bit of time. It was actually kind of funny, and pretty much just trying out a few things. So what do you see here on the screen? This is a simulation in Excel where you would take the normal LD5 rate, which is 0.35, and then just do a 2,860 scrolls, which is technically like amongst like 10 LD5s. That's kind of the idea, 10 LD5s. So we have a simulation of that running in A and B, and then we have a different method running in C and D. So in this one, you actually see that one simulation is getting 17 LD5s, whereas the other one is just getting 7. And that's you and you're guilty. So you're doing the exact amount of same scrolls, exact amount same rates, but you're just unlucky, or one gets 17 and the other got 7. Then I have one over here that's working slightly different. And how is this one working? We actually get a lower LD5 chance by quite a lot, but every scroll we do, we get an increased chance of getting an LD5. I was playing around a little bit with these numbers because the idea is like the same amount of scrolls, you still get about like 10 LD5s, which you actually do see here right now. Does this mean it's always better? No, it's not actually always better, but that's what we see over here. And then we actually start off with an LD5 rate that is a lot lower. So the start off LD5 rate is actually just a 4. You could play around with these numbers, like Com2us could make up whatever this is, but this for me just to kind of like give like a visual representation of what does it mean if you actually have lower numbers as a starting point, but every time that you don't get an LD5, you get slightly improved just lightning rates or LD5 rates or whatever you want to call it. So every time I press F9, you see that it switches. Okay, so in this case, both of them were pretty unlucky on this side. We got a 6 and a 7 LD5s here, but still kind of similar. This one guy got the 11 and the other guy got 4. Yeah, okay. This time we got a 9 and a 10 over here, and we got a 12 and a 7 here. That's a gap of 5, and this is just a gap of 1. Once again, this time, okay, it's 13 and 14. This is 11 and 9, so this time the second method was actually further apart because that's like the winning and losing thing. This time it was actually a 10 and a 2 and a 10 and a 13 over here. 9 and a 10, 11 and 11. So let's see, just a bunch of times, like 5 and 2, 5 and 2. So we're just looking at these two numbers right now. Like how big is the gap? So in this case, there's no gap in this one, which is the better one. But I've seen this method sometimes get like up to 19 LD5s and also up to like 3 LD5s. So that's really the big difference, where with this, at some point, you keep adding the 0.18 until you at some point get an LD5. So let's look at the moment where we get an LD5 from this one. Yeah, over here. So after 202 scrolls, we get an LD5, it gets reset, and then we start trying to get that number up again just to get like more rates until we hit the point. Let's see how many scrolls that is at. Oh, this is actually pretty dry streak. Pretty dry streak, but here at this point, well, we actually rolled a 0, which is the absolute lowest you can roll. So yeah, therefore, for that reason, you get an LD5 there. So with this method, it's very hard to go like 1,000 scrolls dry. And if you would lower the base number and up this number even more, it would get to the point where at some point you just have to pull your LD5. At some point, you just get like LD5 chance of like 1% per scroll, or like maybe even 2-3% per scroll, because you have been doing that many LD5 or that many LD scrolls. And that is just kind of the thing that I would like to see, because in this case, there's one guy with 15, the other guy with 7. That's a huge fucking difference, man. In this, the fucking guy with succeeded, Scribble Bibble is here. I'm just joking, my man. But yeah, you kind of get the idea of like, it also doesn't make sense that some accounts just get like 3-4 LD5s like within a few scrolls, and other accounts have to take like, I don't know how many scrolls. And sure, you can play around with these numbers to make it even more fair, but it's just the difference. I saw like a 4 and a 14 on this one. Let's actually see like a very big number, because I do know that we can get this gap to a very 12. Okay, this is a perfect one. So with method B, the method that I would propose, we get like a difference between 10 and 8. The other method that is normal in the game right now, one guy has 9 LD5s, the other one has 21. With the exact same amount of scrolls. Bro, that's just unfair, man. It's just straight up unfair. So that is the difference what I would like to propose. Is Com2us ever gonna do this? Probably never, but hey, this is just something that I would like to see. And might you ask like, oh, but whales are just gonna spend then more and get more LDs. No, they're just gonna be less super lucky and less super unlucky. So does that make anyone spend more? Not really. Only downside to this is and could be, for example, saying like, oh, I finally pulled my LD5 and it is a shit one. Now I have to build up the count to get chances of getting an LD5 again, which I think I will never do, and therefore I might quit. That's the only thing, that if you pull a shit LD5, you're like, ah, well, now I pulled a shitty one, I'm never gonna get one again. That could maybe be a thing, it's just gonna take a while, but in the end, you could also see it the other way around. At least you don't have to go another 1,000 scrolls dry. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Just for the sake of it, let's see if we can get a higher number than 12. 10, 9, 10 again, 9 again. Yeah, these are just some absurd numbers. I haven't seen one where, because it is possible to go 2,800 scrolls dry. Technically, it's possible. But you would probably need to do a lot of rotations for that to actually get to that number. 9 again, 10 again. There's such a big fluctuation in like how much of the difference we see on the gap here on the left. It's just insane. And the biggest gap I've seen on the right is like 5-ish. If we go really fast, 5. I saw an 11 and a 12 on the left. The highest I've seen on the right side is like 5. Yeah, literally like 5. And on the left side, I've seen like 12, 13. Those are probably the highest numbers I've seen. If we all, oh, we can actually hold it and then just... No, like the highest, 15? Wow, I'm not sure if this is recording properly, but yeah, 11, 12, 15 is about like the highest I've seen of like difference on this side in like the method, and the highest I've seen on the right side in method is like 5 LD5s. That's a huge difference. That is absolutely a huge difference. So yeah. Once again, in the comments, let me know what you guys think about this method. Is Com2us ever gonna implement this? Probably not, but if there are any other things you would recommend me to test, let me know in the comments. I might test those in a future video. And once again, I highly appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe to the channel, because these videos tend to take a little bit of effort to make, especially if I want to do a really big sample size. So guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab, which has the dungeon guide archive and the video guide archive, which contains all of the guides that you need. Hope to see you there.